but we relied on college radio a lot because those were guys who were pretty committed, not just to ska music, but all kinds of underground music, punk rock, hardcore. And so those guys would be the ones. There was a big focal point, like WFMU in New Jersey was a huge station in New York. They had a ska show. So when we had Moon Records, we used the college radio network as one of our primary promotion tools. So that was the way that a lot of people got to hear about it. And then, of course, paper fanzines. Remember them?
This is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, this is Kate Clover.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rose.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
It's Tim Howard here from Mike and the Mechanics.
Hello, I'm Amanda Lehman.
I'm Billy Harvey.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Casey Sampson from the band Twist Stop.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Mitchell.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
You're listening to Almost Famous Magazine.
Come join us for this interview. Check it out, Almost Famous Magazine.
Welcome back to The Hang, everyone, right here at Almost Famous Magazine. Thank you to everyone who subscribed, ring the bell, shared our channel. It really helps, and we're really enjoying sharing these great conversations with all of you. We're thrilled to be covering, once again, Punk Rock Bowling this year, the 25th anniversary. And leading up to Punk Rock Bowling weekend, we're going to be hanging with bands that are performing, so that make sure that you subscribe. And if you have not made your plans to come to Punk Rock Bowling, what are you waiting for? This is the year, the 25th anniversary, and there's an amazing lineup that we're going to get to know. Also, we're working with a great foundation called Punk Rock Saves Lives. They are at Punk Rock Bowling and across the country at other punk festivals, as well as shows for you to get to know. They do an incredible job helping the punk rock community across the country. And at Punk Rock Bowling, we're working with them to give away exclusive one-of-a-kind autographs that you could win. So please stop by, say hello, and get to know Punk Rock Saves Lives. Today, I'm thrilled to meet this gentleman. I'm going to be honest with you, because I am a big ska fan going way, way, way back, even though the two of us are only about 23 years old. I'm hanging with Buck at a legendary ska band, the Toasters, and they're performing at a club show at the Downtown Grand poolside on May 24th. So be prepared to get a swim and your ska on. Buck, welcome to The Hang.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. I am so stoked. Like I said, I am a huge ska fan. It's been in my blood since probably before I was born, so I don't have to give away either of our age. So you formed the Toasters back in about 1981-ish in New York City. I'm curious, what drew you to ska? What was it about the genre that you said, this is where I want to live and have my make my music?
Well, obviously I'm from Britain, and so I was listening to ska music in the 60s, and again, more particularly in the 70s, late 70s, with the whole two-tone thing. And I moved to New York in 1980 to actually work in a science fiction shop, as it happens. And I was really shocked that people in New York, which very cosmopolitan city, had very little awareness of what ska music was. I remember going to see a show with the English Beat at Roseland, and there was hardly anybody there. So at that point, I thought, well, I wanted to start a band anyway, because originally I thought I was just going to be in New York for a couple of months. And what happened is that the period of the hire kept on getting prolonged and prolonged. So I just started the band to have something to do a couple of nights a week, just to, play some music, have a couple of beers with some buddies. And it turned into the Toasters playing ska music, which nobody on the Lower East Side knew what the heck that was. So I had to try to show them how to play it. And it was just a snowball that ran down the hill. And eventually I ended up quitting my day job in 1985 and going on the road full time with the band. And that was 40 years ago.
Wow. Wow, that's a great start. And I'll tell you, I grew up in Western New York. I mean, I was born in Manhattan, but I grew up in Western New York. And back in those days, it was so, it was so difficult to get your hands on music, right? Because it was all imported. There wasn't streaming. There wasn't an online presence. And I remember the first time of hearing the Specials, Two Tone Madness, and really like just where did this come from? And I want more. So the fact that you really got brought it to New York City is fabulous.
Yeah, well, I think back in the day, you could have considered that there wasn't really any indie distribution at that point in time. That was the heyday of indie distribution was in the early to mid '90s, before Sony killed it with the MP3. That's what the MP3 was for, I think. Um, but we relied on college radio a lot, because those were guys who were pretty committed, not just to Sky Music, but all kinds of underground music, punk rock, hardcore. And so those guys would be the ones. There was a big focal point, like WFMU in New Jersey was a huge station in New York. They had a ska show. So when we had Moon Records, we used the college radio network as one of our primary promotion tools. So that was the way that a lot of people got to hear about it. And then, of course, paper fanzines. Remember them?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that
I
that
kind of
was
miss them.
yeah. I mean, bring them back, bring them back. But yeah. But back in the day, it was kind of really hard for people to find out about this, and the whole getting Sky Music off the ground was difficult because people at major labels weren't interested at all. I think mostly because they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't have a convenient pigeonhole to put it in. And I think the whole idea that it was music being marketed to black people and white people at the same time, they couldn't get their head around that either. So Sky Music was pretty much uh, doomed to be an independent prodigy, and it still is.
Yeah, I remember I grew up in the Rochester, New York area, and WITR, which turned out to be the college radio station for where I ended up going to college,
Yeah, yeah,
used to have a lot of ska on, and that's kind of how I was introduced to it. And it just, I think it's that blend of styles, and the fact that it does cross kind of the sociological spectrum of
yeah,
people, that yes, it could be confusing to one, but I think that it also adheres more people because there's a little something for everybody
yeah. I
within
mean,
ska.
to people who ask me, what it is, and I get asked that a lot in Texas. I say it's basically, if you haven't heard of Sky Music, imagine uh, uh, like a mixed drink which has reggae, rock and roll, and jazz in it, and mix that up, and it's somewhere there. But that covers a lot of genres. Um, but I think once people listen to Sky Music, I mean, you either love it or you hate it. But I think once you become a ska fan, it seems to be a lifelong addiction.
Oh, it certainly is. You mentioned Moon Records and kind of that. Uh, it was almost like a DIY kind of thing back there. Then before we had the modern DIY movement in music, and you brought together these bands, bringing together a lot of different ska bands, up and coming bands. You know, how do you feel about having really kind of built that out and been the engine for other ska bands to find a life and to start to proliferate around the country?
Well, the whole idea behind that network was to mainly to help people get on the first rung of their career ladder, by getting their music and putting it out. I mean, I remember going around A&R guys in New York and LA with Toasters demos, and basically getting laughed out of here. People telling me that we'd never get anywhere with that circus music. Had the main music critic of the Village Voice paper in New York City, which was very influential at that time in 1982 when we shopped our first demo. This guy Rob Christgau, who told me he'd never review a Toasters record because he thought we were just a bar band. So, I wonder, here I am doing my job 45 years later. I wonder what he's doing. But I mean, I guess, I have a stubborn streak in me, so I wouldn't take no for an answer. And I thought if I can't get these guys to get interested in the band, then I guess I'm going to have to do it myself. And that's what we did.
Yeah. No, it was an interesting time back then in music because there were a number of artists who were creating music that I think the early to mid 80s was when the mold started to be broken, right? I mean, Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight didn't find its popularity right away. They were playing it on black radio stations to begin with. And I think that when they started to realize that it didn't matter white, black, Hispanic, that they could find bands and music could find a larger audience. I think it really broke those stereotypes that had been made and brought about an opportunity more than anything else for bands to get heard.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think the music industry, particularly in the USA, was very monolithic and very stereotyped. And like I said, they had all these compartments, compartmentalized way of promoting music. So either you were R&B or you were jazz or you were urban. They had all these euphemisms for like white people music and black people music. And so with ska music, we kind of had to make our own pigeonhole. But we were helped at the time, one, by the fact that I think the music industry was evolving at that point, and it became a time where independent record labels and independent distribution, primarily through people like IRD, who went on to become Relativity, who's now Sony. So that's another failed experiment. But I think at that time it was possible as an artist to control your whole means of production in the sense that you could, if you had the money to go make your own record, which is something Joe Jackson told me to do, by the way, and put it out yourself and get it distributed by indie distribution, which is now these days that's not possible because all the indie distributors have been gone out of business basically, or bought by people like Sony or people like EMI, and so it's not possible now to do what we did back then. People can go on the internet, sure, and stick a video up, but you're never going to make any money out of it. And so the nature of the beast now is that you have to be a touring band more than ever before. And just circling back to what you're saying about selling merchandise, that's where the band's income is now because music isn't worth anything.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there's now we're at I think 2 generations who have been taught that you don't have to financially contribute to the art that you have the way it used to be, and it makes me sad. That's why we'll talk about it a little later, but we are big proponents of purchasing your music, your merch, attending shows, getting tickets, and spreading the word because what they've done with this streaming stuff is just ridiculous. And
yeah, it's brutal. Well, it's not referred to as music anymore. It's referred to as content. So it's basically blah blah blah. They don't really care what it is. It's just they want kids to consume stuff, use it once and throw it away. So it's become disposable. But it's kind of a crazy concept. I'm an old school guy. I like to take album covers in the bathroom and read them. So that's where I'm from. It's nice to see, by the way, that vinyl's made a big resurgence in terms of people buying that. Maybe a little too far in the wrong direction, but nevertheless, and it's funny to see people buying cassette tapes again now. I mean, when we started Moon, when we put the first records out in 85 and 86, our formats were vinyl and cassette. And then in 87, 88, we started doing CDs. But now it's gone back to vinyl and cassette. So at least there's a cyclical movement going on in industry.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting for them to put cassette decks back in new cars. Wait till that happens.
I had a 1965 Ford Mustang one time, which had a 8-track in it. So maybe we can like get that way. 8-track
You know,
8-track was a very, very, very bizarre format.
to say the least. And I think half of them ended up unraveled in the backseat of the cars. They were not quite as dependable as some of the things we have today.
No, but I mean, cassettes. I'm not saying we sell a lot, but I think we just had a project where we did a limited run of our catalog, and basically we're on release number 10 now, and it's almost sold out. So people buy them to a certain extent. Maybe as a novelty item, but I think guys with 70s trucks love us.
Well, there you go. And you live in Texas. You know there are a lot of trucks. So, well, now, one of the things that I like to learn about from guests is for those watching us today who have not seen you before. They come across this podcast and they're like, "What are the Toasters all about?" And I think it's been a few years, and correct me if I'm wrong, since you guys have put out any new material. But if I was someone new to the band, never heard them before, what are one or two songs that you would say are like the go-to starters to get me hooked on the band?
Well, probably the songs that get the most airplay are Two-Tone Army and Weekend in LA. Weekend in LA is from the 87 Skaboom record, and Two-Tone Army from the 1990, what year was that? 1996 Hard Band for Dead record. As far as making new music, we've put out a few singles, but I made a conscious decision around about 2000 I was going to put most of our budget into global touring. So I think in terms for the band, it's way more important to go to places like China and Russia. Well, maybe not Russia at the moment anymore. Australia, South America, and take the band down there to play live, than put out more studio music. So that's just a question of deciding what's the best use of our budget.
Well, and you have to look at where your best opportunity for some revenue is as well.
Yeah, well, that's playing live. I mean, I could spend $40,000 on a record and probably never make my money back off that per se. But $40,000 worth of air tickets gets me all over the world.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, you mentioned a lesson you learned from Joe Jackson. Now, yeah. I'm also a big Joe Jackson. Like I'm an 80s kind of listener. I mean, I was a big Joe Jackson fan, Elvis Costello, Madness, Specials. I mean, most of my early days came from the UK when it came to music.
Well, you just answered that question about who do I want to go in the studio with right there.
Well, we'll get there in a second. We'll get there. But we won't mention who I might just mention that might have been. But what was that like working with Joe Jackson?
Well, it's I met him in 1979. I was living in London, working for these guys. This shop called Forbidden Planet, which was a mixture of science fiction, comics, film and TV. It's like a multimedia shop. And one of the things I was doing for them, I was buying collections of rare books and magazines, comics, toys, that kind of stuff. And one of the clients they gave me to find comics for was Joe Jackson. So that's how I met him. So I was his comic buyer, buying him EC comics, Silver Age DCs. He'd come in with a wants list and said, "Can you find me these?" So, and then when I moved to New York in 1980, one day he walked into the shop in New York, and we're like, "What are you doing here?" And what are you doing here? He just moved to New York at the same time. So we started going out, once a week, having a beer. And so when I started the band, he was pretty influential in, helping us do this, do that. Here's not what to do. And he produced the first EP for us in 1985, Recriminations EP, plays plays a melodic on one of the tracks. And then he came back in the studio with us in '88 to do Thrill Me Up, and then again in '92 to do the New York Fever record. So he's actually done 3 records for us back in the day.
Wow. And I had no idea he was a comic fan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I wonder if I ever get a chance to ask him what that reading of comics might have influenced in some of his lyric writing and his thoughts around crafting his stories.
Yeah. I mean, he's a pretty eclectic guy. What I would call a musician's musician, really. And I just actually saw him in England last year. We're on tour there, and he showed up at one of the gigs, that little pub in Salisbury, and hung out, had some beers. So I'm still in touch with him. He lives sometimes in Berlin, sometimes in New York, and sometimes in Portsmouth in England, where he's from.
No. Well, you know what? I bet you we could do a lot of stories, but we're here to talk about you and the Toasters. So let's get back to that, right? You mentioned, you're spending $40,000 to tour the world, and y'all have been playing for a long time. There've been a lot of members in and out of the band over time. Has there been one performance in your career that, of all the ones that you remember, whether they're good, bad, or otherwise, that really stands out for you, that one performance that was like everything either came together and it was the greatest experience of your career, or possibly everything went wrong and you had your greatest Spinal Tap moment of your career? Is there one that stands out?
Well, there've been a lot of Spinal Tap moments, but I think the most memorable concert was in Venezuela in 1993. We played a show. We played 3 or 4 shows there, and one of them was in this stadium outside Caracas, about 2 hours outside Caracas, and we played with this Venezuelan band called Desorden Público. They had a radio station called Radio Pirata, Pirate Radio. I wrote the Pirate Radio song for them on Enemy of the System record. But we played at the stadium, and there must have been 20,000 kids there. And I had absolutely no clue that anybody in Venezuela knew who we were, but apparently they did. So that was just blew my mind. And since that time, I've come to realize that some of the biggest ska scenes in the world are not in the US and are not in Europe. They're in Asia and in South America. Those are where the huge scenes are. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of these shows going on in Mexico at the moment. It's like incredible amount of kids interested, and it's a very, very young audience.
It's interesting. I just last night photographed a band out of Houston called Easy Band, and they played San Antonio recently too. And they are a Tejano band. Some of them are from Mexico, but they've taken English language songs and made them Tejano. Have you heard about this?
No, but I totally get it.
Yeah, I mean, they've totally gone backwards from traditional Tejano into, let's take this American music. And they did, what was it, Hey Delilah, and they did a Taylor Swift. They did, I think, Shake It Off by Taylor Swift, and they opened up with Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles. And they're playing a love of that English music in the style that they all grew up with.
Yeah, that's great. I think there's been a huge role reversal in music at that point. I mean, back in the day, it was like really imperative that bands, no matter where they're from, Germany, France, wherever, sang in English. But that doesn't happen anymore. People are very happy singing in their own language, and they just borrow the music and adapt it. But I think that's super healthy. Music.
Oh, absolutely.
Music. So I tell people, music's organic. It's not Lego where you like take it and pop it together. It's more like water. It's gonna go where it wants to go, and you can't really stop it.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, because that's an interesting concept. with the advent and rise of all the technology we have and the change in music production from, tape to completely digital, what are your feelings about your sentiments on some of these artists that are coming up these days who, they tirelessly work note by note, click note in a computer, versus, the idea of just playing it live or playing to tape and having to retrack. What are some of your sentiments on the kind of the way music production's changed?
Well, number one, I think it's different strokes for different folks, like we say in England. And if your best means of expression is to basically painstakingly put a song together bit by bit, that's not how I do it. But I mean, if you want to do that, you can. And like you say, now we have the technology to do that. Anybody, like we're doing right now, can have a production studio in your own home with a laptop and some cheap software. You don't have to go into a monster studio in New York that's costing you $300 an hour and hire an engineer to make your record. So if you want to do it that way, you can. Me, I like seeing bands live because that's how I think music should be listened to, preferably down the pub with a pint of beer, But that's my heritage. Um, some of the best shows I've ever been to in my life have been grotty pubs in grotty pubs in London with fantastic bands like Graham Parker and the Rumour, you know, Brinsley Schwartz, which is one of the greatest pub rock bands of all time.
Ever.
And then Brinsley went to play guitar with Graham Parker. So for me, that was like, wow, man. That period, just going back to what you were talking about earlier about the 80s being a time when music broke out. I think that actually started in the mid 70s when you had, and I'm talking about England now because I'm not sure exactly how it unfolded in the States. But if you take a year like 1977, for example, which was the last year I was at college, I saw Elvis Costello, which is also who I want to go in the studio with at some point, because he also produced Madness. I saw Elvis Costello. I saw the Human League. I went to the Anarchy in the UK tour at Leeds Poly and saw that. And then at the same time, you got bands like Joe Jackson and David Bowie. There was so much going on, like multi-genre musical explosion. I mean, coming out of disco music, which was mindless. But the end of the 70s, I think, really laid the table for all the great 80s bands, and just the proliferation of indie music in general. So I think the seeds were planted by those acts.
Oh, absolutely. And the impact, I mean, you can't bring up Brinsley Schwartz without talking about, Nick Lowe coming out of that and all of the acts that he touched and produced and all of the great music that came out of that period, that you could perform a Nick Lowe song and no one ever knows it's Nick Lowe, but they've heard it because of all the other bands that have touched that, the Rock Pile days, all that stuff. It was an incredible time.
I mean, Nick Lowe is kind of the musical equivalent of Seven Steps to Kevin Bacon, But I mean, I think some of the best songs I like from him is when he was playing with Dave Edmunds and in the Rock Pile years. I mean, what a great time, And all of this stuff was happening at the same time. The whole two-tone ska explosion, the whole punk rock explosion, the new wave bands, for lack of a better word, and then the techno bands like Gary Newman, Human League, bands like that. All of this was happening at the same time. So we went from having no choice to being spoiled by choice.
Spoiled is definitely it, because as someone who didn't start going to the UK till about 10 or so years ago, I will certainly tell you I wish I could have grown up in that experience of music, because it's just I mean, if you see right, there's some Nick Lowe on the wall behind me right over there.
Well, I can see your records. I can't see what they are. Yeah.
I've got some Nick Lowe. I've got some Squeeze, Little Genesis.
Yeah. Another great band.
So yeah, so definitely. As a matter of fact, I'll be seeing Glenn Tilbrook in about a week. He's the work that Squeeze is doing to keep their music alive these days is incredible. The touring and their band is tighter than ever. So, but again, we could probably do this for hours going on about other bands, and we certainly share some loves of music. But I think, if I remember correctly, without checking any notes, we were here to talk about the Toasters and punk rock bowling. Now, this is not, if I understand correctly, your first punk rock bowling. Tell us about the times you've played punk rock bowling and some of the great memories you've had.
Well, I think looking back, we've only played it once before. I thought we'd played an early one, but not. That's probably just wishful thinking. But we played the year that the Specials were touring the album, and they had that girl. What was her name? Her name escapes me, but it's basically Linval and Terry. So that reunion. So that was fantastic. So this year to get the chance to go back and play with Linval with the Agrolites backing him, which is going to be pretty awesome, in the hotel. So I said, yeah, I'm gonna cancel the last week of our tour and reroute to get out to do that. So that's going to be the last show of the May tour in the US, and then I have to hurry up and fly over to Europe and do that. But I'm really looking forward to that show.
Yeah, no, I'm so stoked to see that you're performing on that bill. I mean, that's going to be a great club show. Are you going to have time to catch any other bands or any of the other goings on for punk rock bowling while you're there?
Probably not. I mean, we have a pretty awkward routing on the back end of that tour because ostensibly it had been an East Coast tour, so we have to basically flip the script and get all the way back out west. So I think we're going to play in Albuquerque the night before at the launch pad. Great little gig there. But then the very next day I have to leave. So we're going to basically just be in Vegas for the day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna have to catch up. I mean, I'm definitely going to that. I'm actually staying at that hotel, so it'll be great to see you guys perform. So now you finish up the punk rock bowling, and then you said you're going where overseas?
Yeah, we have. I have to bring the van back to Texas, the truck back, and then I'm flying straight to Holland, and we have a 2-month tour in Europe right after that.
Because of the differences in the beginnings of ska and the second and third wave that really happened over here, what is your experience between the differences in audiences between, let's say, US ska fans, UK, you mentioned South America? What are some of the differences in those audiences and how they react to the music? Do you notice a difference?
I think the major delineation is the age group of the respective audiences. The American fans, I think, are a younger demographic than the European fans, especially after basically. I'm searching for the right word. I was going to say splinter, but maybe schism is a better word. Of when ska punk movement started in the 90s, which nobody really saw that coming. That was a bit of a curveball, but that certainly brought in a lot of younger kids, primarily from the punk rock world, who had no clue what ska music was. So that was actually, I think, a tremendous boost to the scene. But if you go to Europe, particularly in England and Germany, and a lot of the more boutique festivals they have there, it's a much older demographic. And then on the other side, if you go to South America and Asia, it's really, really young kids. So I'm not quite sure how that happened, but that's a new reality.
Well, yeah, I attended. Madness did a show on Clapham Common for Bank Holiday. I think back about 9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago now, and was over there. And the experience of seeing Madness there compared to seeing them, I saw them once. Actually, I've seen them twice in the States. Once was at the Inland Invasion in San Bernardino, but that was a whole day festival. But I saw them at the House of Blues in Las Vegas. And the difference in the audience between just that crowd in Las Vegas and seeing them in the UK was night and day. It was absolutely incredible, for sure. You know, that brings us around, and we already know the kind of half of the answer to this question, but we're going to get to the why. We're going to get to the why piece of it. You know, we talk about dream collaboration, the opportunity to get creative with someone that you haven't been able to spend some time with or get into a studio with. I'm not big on bucket lists, but we do know that our podcast reaches a good number of people, and it has changed trajectories, and it's created some great conversations. So you mentioned that your dream collaboration would be with Elvis Costello, but the next part of the question is why?
Well, I've always been a big fan. I first saw him live in '76, I think, when he was touring the My Aim Is True record, and I was just blown away at how good he was. He was still known as Declan McManus most of the time back then. But then, of course, he did some work with Two-Tone and produced a single for Madness, at least. Maybe one for the specials. So he's a ska fan, and I got to work with him once. Basically, I was working with Kevin Lyman, who was doing the production for the "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" tour. That was a live show, and I worked Carnegie Hall in New York City with Lyman, and I had to basically babysit Emmylou Harris and Alison Krauss. Literally, I mean, I spent half the night carrying Alison Krauss's baby around. And other bands like the Blind Boys of Alabama, fantastic act. But the standout artist on that whole show for me was this scrawny old redneck guy called Ralph Stanley, who sang. Are you familiar with that movie? The
Oh yeah,
Oh Brother, what? Yeah. And he did an a cappella version of um, Man of Constant Sorrow on the stage in Carnegie Hall, and you could have heard a pin drop. I mean, it just the sound that came out of that dude filling up that massive room is like basically, I was awestruck by that. So anyway, but Elvis Costello and T-Bone Burnett were the MCs for the show, so I got to meet Elvis and his sister, and Ethan Cohn and what's that woman, Frances McDormand? She was there, so that was a really good night. But I've always been a huge Elvis Costello fan, and you know, one of my dreams, or one of the things that I need to happen at some point, is have him produce at least one tune for me.
Well, then everybody who watches knows what to do. If you're connected to Elvis Costello, get him this video. Make sure you make the connection down below in the comments, and let's see what we can do to make this dream come true. As everyone knows, and we talked about it before, you know, we have to support art. We must, because without that support, we just won't have it anymore. Art is not free. Art takes an investment. So please, if you're seeing the Toasters on this tour, buy some merch. If you're not seeing the Toasters, what are you waiting for? Buy a ticket and go see this. It's going to be the most joyous moment you're ever going to have. Ska music fills the heart, the soul, and the mind. They've got on their website, and all the links will be below. You can buy everything from records to merch online. So support the Toasters. As with that, though, we do know that, you know, we love to talk about other artists that we're enjoying at any given time. Who are a few that like are on your playlist right now? Could be someone old, could be someone new. You could take a walk to them, meditate them, go to the gym, whatever. But who are some artists that are really fulfilling your ears right now and some of the things they're doing?
Well, a, a lot of the bands I'm listening to at the moment, by dint of actually just playing with them on the European tours, they're all English bands, and it's what I call like the new generation of UK ska bands. One is the Skints, who are not a ska band in the pure sense of the term, but they basically plug nicely into that role. Um, they're probably one of the more commercial bands, but I think they're pretty awesome with what they do. And then there are two other bands that are not well known at all in the States. One is called the Dakar Skanks, um, which is a female fronted band out of Brighton who are really awesome. And the singer reminds me of Polystyrene a lot, actually. And the other band is this. It's basically a duo who a lot of times plays with a backing track, which a lot of people seem to be doing these days. But I guess maybe not everybody can afford a nine-piece band on stage. But it's a band called Death of Guitar Pop who are writing like quirky tunes. So maybe people want to go on YouTube and check those people out. YouTube's good for something after all.
Absolutely, and for seeing this episode. I mean, my biggest UK obsession right now. I don't know if you've heard of this band, Kid Capici.
Yeah, I've heard of them. I don't think I'm going to have a chance to go see them live, but there seems to be a bunch of bands in that ilk at the moment who are really mixing it up.
Yeah, they were on tour with nothing. They opened for Nothing But Thieves, and I saw them here in Dallas. I had no idea who they were, and I'm totally obsessed. I've bought the entire catalog. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to make Punk Rock Bowling. They originally thought they would. I'm kind of bummed about that, but I am there. To me, it's kind of if you took the energy of the Clash and you mixed it lyrically with some of Madness's the sensibilities in their lyrics and put it together and made something out of it. It's kind of what it feels like to me. But it's definitely there's something there, and it's going to happen big for them. I'm sure of it. They're really good.
I mean, it's nice to see some new stuff come. For a moment, I felt the music had kind of stagnated somewhat over the last 10 years, but there seems to be a lot of like fresh stuff bubbling up at the moment. So hopefully we're on the cusp of some new period of just great bands getting out there. But of course, it's very difficult now for artists, very difficult to tour even. Um, and a lot of kids ask me what you suggest we do to get started, and I have to say, well, don't quit your day job, basically, because there's not a lot of music to be made at the moment. Too many bands touring, not enough venues. One of the silent killers of the industry being the fact that venues are closing left, right, and center. And that also, especially after COVID, a lot of people who were indie promoters and local promoters got out of the game. So there's been, to my eye at least, a massive retraction in the scene and a lot of downward pressure within the scene because bigger bands now are playing on smaller stages. So it's harder and harder for bands who are starting up to get a toehold. So going back to that, I think you have to support local bands any way you can, buy their stuff. Please don't ask to get on the guest list. Go buy a ticket and support them. Otherwise, we're not going to have anything left anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's how we feel here at the Hang is you got to support the acts. But this has been fantastic. If we had more time, we could probably go on for hours. I look forward to seeing you in Denton and in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Everybody, go out, get your Toasters tickets, get prepared. It's going to be an incredible show. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and everybody. Hopefully, you enjoyed this. I know I did. This was really special for me. We're going to be bringing you more Punk Rock Bowling preview hangs. Also, don't forget Punk Rock Saves Lives is going to be at Punk Rock Bowling as well. And if you see them out there or you see them anywhere else, please get to know them and all the incredible work they're doing. They are really there to support the punk community, the ska community, and without them, other people's lives wouldn't be so fulfilled. So we owe a deep debt of gratitude there to Rob and Tina and what they're doing. So, Bucks, it's been great getting to know you, and thank you so much for hanging with me.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out, and I'll see you. I'll see you in Denton. You can take you can take a band photo for me. I have some of the European crew on this run actually, so
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and then and I think we may also have a Punk Rock Saves Life booth at that show. I'll follow up on that and see where we are with it.
That would be fantastic. That would be absolutely fantastic. I look forward to seeing you soon. Everybody, thanks for joining us, and bye for now.
Thank you, Scott.